All right. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. I'm super excited to be back doing the Krakens again with you folks. And I know a lot of you that say, I've been checking some of the comments saying, Dave, did you get a full-time job or anything like this? Did you see, because we noticed that you're not producing as much on the public side, or at least releasing as much on the public side. And the answer is, to be honest, again, not to keep selling the Patreon, but even those that sign up simply for the $4 package will see that it's been nothing but increase in quality content in addition to the topics being discussed. It's just that unfortunately there's so much that we're delving into that gets into a lot of sensitive areas, not just in with respects to some of the more, dare I say, explicit material, but even some of the scientific material relative to I guess you could say surface level academia and literature that I don't want to sort of push too far. So we kind of, keep that on the Patreon side for now relative to some larger potential efforts, if you will. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. And I want to thank all you folks for the incredible feedback on the conversation in which I had with Mr. Ross Coulthart. And of course, there will be many more conversations like that in the near future. I also want to mention very quickly as well, we had Sean Stone, Mr. Oliver Stone's son, on the show that, again, we discussed so many different diverse topics that if we put it on YouTube, we would get nicked within an instant. So again, that's why it's out there on the Patreon, patreon.com/GenerationZ, and much more content like that. However, let's jump into it. So first and foremost, United States regulators are now suing the Winklevoss crypto exchange called Gemini over statements regarding its Bitcoin futures contracts. Again, I immediately, maybe this is just me personally, with a little bit of a bias to sort of strategy or metaphorical chess games, as we often refer to on the Kraken segments here. I jump to, okay, what's the play? What's the reason behind the scenes? But again, it could be quite possible that they may have just been the statements made by Gemini, or those behind the Gemini crypto maybe have just were truly incorrect, and this is going, or fraudulent or something of the sort. I don't mean to imply that in a way that signifies that is the case, but it's possible this just may be, a legitimate following the rules of the system, and certain rules may have not been exactly followed to the T. But again, this is just speculation. If we're not on the ground there, if we're not in those meetings ourselves, hard for us to say. So the next thing is that Nancy Pelosi's January 6th committee announces the first public hearing will take place on June 9th in prime time at the 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, that to me personally, regardless Republican, Democrat, it just goes to show you big picture when we zoom out how much these politicians love the cameras. I think that goes without saying, regardless of where any of you reside on the political spectrum. I don't think we can all. I think we can all agree on the fact that they love the cameras. So The next thing is that the 68th Bilderberg meeting with participants from 21 countries had began just a handful of days ago relative to the day that this is being recorded in Washington, D.C. Some of the visitors and members attending were the Vice President of Facebook, CIA and NSC directors, NSC standing for National Security Council, if I'm not mistaken, in addition to the CEO of Pfizer. So I'm going to leave that there. The next thing is that, according to spectator.co.uk, corporations are studiously avoiding any mention of pride in countries where they might lose customers or get on the wrong side of the government. Quote, the pride flag is no longer inclusive. It's a gay symbol, after all, and gay men and lesbians rank just below white people and non-graduates in the current ideology's hierarchy of villainy. End quote. Again, according to I guess you could say, according to spectator.co.uk, and I believe the headline was, when will companies end their embarrassing pride hypocrisy? To me, it's not so much about trying to derive an emotional, direction or sway to influence people in one way or another, because if I were to do that, to me personally, this is no disrespect to any other show, whether, no disrespect to any show in general. I would be no different than a sort of left-leaning show or right-leaning show if I were to sort of reinvigorate an emotional response from this headline. If we take a non-emotional or an attempted neutral response and zoom out big picture, again, I would call out the hypocrisy regardless if this was about pride, LGBTQ community, whether this was about many different things, as you folks know. So point being is that there's something to be said when, again, certain corporations are choosing to do certain things in certain countries compared to others, when the hypocrisy is what it is about calling out, in my opinion, regardless of the topic of that hypocrisy. So the next thing is that according to ABC News, the Spanish court has summoned Mike Pompeo, former U.S. Secretary of State and ex-CIA director, to testify about CIA plans to kidnap and assassinate WikiLeaks' Julian Assange. I believe they had if I'm not mistaken, they had a full-on, I think, department called the WikiLeaks team, something like this. Again, regardless if Democrat or Republican, it just goes to show you that when you leak the secrets of the establishment, I'm not saying I'm for the leaking of that, to be very clear, but again, from a neutral perspective, or an attemptedly neutral perspective, that they don't like it. And I personally, I couldn't help but draw the parallel between, organized criminals, so to speak. You rat on them, they try and kill you. This case, Assange released a bunch of emails, and all of a sudden they're still trying to kill him. Now, then, to play devil's advocate, the whole thing becomes, well, Dave, don't you think if they really wanted to kill him, they would have by now? And I think it's multi-layered in terms of the exposure he has. Even if they used again, not saying I'm for this at all, but for those that say, why don't they just use a direct energy weapon on the guy? I think it's a little more complicated than that, truth be told, given potential things that he still may be holding on to as leverage and you name it. But that's what happens when, again, I'm not saying I'm for WikiLeaks nor against it, but it's certainly, I must say, regardless of political affiliation or perspective, and it certainly revealed a lot of things about how things operate behind the scenes. And not to mention, I believe it's also thanks to WikiLeaks that we got the emails between Tom DeLonge and a general that got out pertaining to the UAP topic. So I guess you could say it's not all quote-unquote bad. But the next thing is that according to the Russian foreign minister, Taiwan is an integral part of China. Taiwan has recently imposed a ban on the sale of modern chips to Russia and Belarus in response to the invasion of Ukraine. Again, we could see now Russian foreign minister, I believe Lavrov, if I'm not mistaken, presuming he hasn't been replaced. I don't think he has. He's very close with Putin. He said that Taiwan is an integral part of China. This speaks to the I guess you could say, the trilateral strategy, if you will, between U.S., China, and Russia, the sort of three superpowers of the world, if that makes sense. There's other countries involved too, don't get me wrong, but what I see here is sort of a very, meticulous strategical chess game, and Foreign Minister Lavrov saying this, presuming that was him that said this, pretty damn sure, is sort of like that statement there is sort of like metaphorically in my mind moving a pawn on the chessboard, slowly but carefully, but deliberately. So the next thing is that according to CISA.gov, CISA, they have issued a detailed advisory on vulnerabilities affecting certain versions of Dominion voting systems software. I'm going to leave that there because, again, I'm not trying to influence in either direction that the machines are safe, nor are they not safe. And I really do mean that. I think that in a time of extreme political divisiveness, I would not be any better if I were to just, give my opinion on things like this and all of that. And I'll be honest with you, I don't have an opinion on stuff like that. I don't know where I stand on that still. So the next thing is that Telegram has released user data to the Federal Criminal Police Office of Germany in several cases. Spiegel has reported the NGO CMAS or CEMAS monitors 3,000 German language channels and groups for, quote, disinformation, anti-Semitism, and right-wing extremism, end quote, according to Spiegel.de. I believe that's a news outlet network in Germany. Germany's interesting, and maybe I'm very incorrect here, but if you folks want to get my take, Germany's interesting because of its history pertaining to this. Now, we also need to be vigilant to the fact that we cannot allow new lawmakers in Germany to use such justifications to allow an overreach on citizens' rights. Now, with that being said, I can hear a lot of you laughing now going, Dave, come on, they've already overstepped our rights. And look, if we're being real here, in my opinion, yeah, cat's been out of the bag for a long time now. So again, for those that say, there's still privacy, I respectfully disagree. I don't think there is. Maybe that's too much of a glass half empty perspective, but that's where I stand at the moment. Anyways, the next thing is that the IAEA has called on policymakers to expand global access to reliable nuclear power with small modular reactors. Again, interesting, speaking of, the whole concept of using nuclear plants all of a sudden seems to be sparking up again. The talk about it, not saying that will be the direction things are going, but interesting that maybe nuclear may not have been as dangerous as some have implied in the past. Not saying that as a fact, I want to be clear for you two, but it makes you think. The next thing is that the chairwoman of the Green Party announced that 2G announces that 2G rules, the exclusion of unvaccinated people, will again become part of a legally binding package of COVID measures in Germany. I'm going to leave that there. I don't belong in or to Germany. I have friends from there, very great people. But the thing is that, unless I'm on the, I don't want to sort of make this a cop-out answer to sort of not address this. But do I agree with this? The exclusion of unvaccinated people will again become part of a legally binding package of COVID measures in Germany. I don't, assuming I'm understanding this correctly, I don't agree with that personally. And I'm not pro nor anti beep boop, if you want to call it. But yeah, I think, assuming I'm reading this correctly, the exclusion of unvaccinated people will again become part of a legally binding, exclusion, excuse me, not inclusion. So, yep. Sorry about that, folks. I don't agree with that personally at all. And this is coming from someone who has family that has gotten the beep boop. Personally, myself, again, a lot of you know my personal status on that. But anyways, the next thing is that data and emails, according to the times.co.uk, from, quote, the laptop from hell, end quote, referring to Hunter Biden's laptop, are causing very serious questions for the Biden family. The questions are not simply going away. This is interesting, and I'm not trying to say this in a political sense to lean in any direction one way or the other, but it'll be interesting. If there's damaging information on that laptop and there's still inquiries, even at a small level, that can't be covered up, if you will, again, I'd like to think that, again, maybe this is too much glass half full, but I'd like to think times are changing relative to information getting out much more easier than it used to. So regardless if Republican or Democrat, if there's corruption, there's corruption, human on human, I must say. So the next thing is that gas prices in the U.S. continue to rise daily, reaching a new record high of $4.81 today, or as a handful of days ago as of the day I'm recording this. Yeah. That, I believe yesterday. I'll leave that there. But here in Canada, we're feeling it too, folks. Don't kid yourselves. The next thing is that Jacinda Ardern, the New Zealand Prime Minister, visited BlackRock. Yeah. If that doesn't tell you, some of the players at the top, I don't know what does. Regardless of political affiliation or perspective, truly. So, the next thing is that according to the telegraph.co.uk, taxpayer-funded study, a new taxpayer-funded study suggests asking, quote, do you menstruate instead of are you female in surveys such as the census to avoid distortions or inaccuracies. So a taxpayer-funded study suggests asking, do you menstruate instead of are you female in surveys such as the census to avoid distortions or inaccuracies. I look, for the sake of getting more accurate questions, if that's truly what certain individuals in the apparatus of the system of government and public service want, if they want better, more decisive answers, now, relative to what agenda they have themselves is not for me to say, but I understand being more specific, that if that's what this point is trying to convey. The next thing is that UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson was going to face a no-confidence vote for parting amid the lockdown in May 2020. He survived the no-confidence vote. 211 votes in favor of him, and 148 were against him. So I'll just kind of leave that there. The guy makes me laugh, the way he talks, the way he acts, so that's my take on him. The next thing is that Elon Musk says he may withdraw the Twitter takeover bid and accuses the platform of, a material breach for withholding data. Twitter shares are now down 5.5% as of the time I'm recording this. I can understand that. Now, to play devil's advocate, this speaks to, oh, Dave, this was a show from the beginning. Look, I don't rule that out either. Who am I to say, right? But at the same time, I understand why, if this is legitimate, why he doesn't want to do it, because of the alleged proclamation of, bots only make up, 5% or less. And then Elon's like, show me the data, and then they wouldn't. So, this speaks to a lot of different angles, in my opinion. We have to see how this plays out. The next thing is that Biden invoked the Defense Production Act to ramp up the production of clean energy technologies. Interesting. I'm going to leave that there. Again, relative to the whole nuclear angle and stuff, interesting. The next thing is that according to the dailymail.co.uk, one of the largest migrant caravans of all time is making its way to the U.S.-Mexico border. I don't, I'll be honest with you folks, I'm kind of sick and tired of constantly discussing this whole, we got to lock up the border thing, mainly because looking at the back end of stuff, in my opinion, I could be wrong, just my opinion. If they really wanted to lock up the border, regardless of Republican, Democrat, you name it, they do it. I'm not trying to say that they want problems to occur, but I got to be careful because of YouTube, and I'm not trying to get all tinfoil hat here, but one must think in some cases like, is there a reason that allegedly, ICE has a disconnect with the White House pertaining to official diplomatic channels of communication and things like that? It's something interesting to look into. So I'm going to leave that there. That's all for again, more of that type of information on the member side and all that. But the next thing is that Target, the 8th largest retailer in the United States, has issued a second profit warning in just 3 weeks, and the stock fell over 9% in pre-market trading. Again, I'm not an economist. We'll just leave that there. And even then, people who are economists look at Janet Yellen. She had to admit she was wrong about her statements in 2020. She said this to Wolf Blitzer on CNN, but she also said the same thing about the housing crisis in 2007 or 8, that there wasn't going to be one because there was no bubble, and then turns out she was wrong then too, as I understand it. So, regardless of which administration she's affiliated with, Republican or Democrat, I would be saying the same thing either way. And the final thing is that the United Nations largely blames Israel for the conflict with Palestinians in a just released 18-page report. According to OHCHR.org, the commissioner Chris Sidoti says, quote, Israel clearly has no intention of ending the occupation, end quote. I mean, one could argue, yeah, that kind of goes without saying, Dave. We've known that the point is to kind of keep the problem and the cycle going, not just in that particular case, but in general with wars, all of that. It's certainly an interesting opinion to take, that's for sure. I'll kind of leave that there without influencing any of you folks' personal opinions. So, with that being said, folks, thank you so very kindly. We do have lots coming, not this week, but next week for the public. For those that are members, everyone already knows that we'll be off this week, or for the rest of this week, more so on the public side than anything. But we will be announcing a stream, as announced earlier in that video, a rabbit hole stream, 2 to 4 hour stream very soon. And then we'll be delving into some very interesting details there as I'm preparing for that as well. So thank you so very much, folks, and we'll catch you all very, very soon. Cheers.